Communications plan and recommendations on the Bundy Ranch deployment and some other stuff that's likely to happen this summer based on some of the hubbub that me and my people have been getting over the internet. Okay, first of all, I've done some preparatory study with the anarchists and people who had organized some of the Occupy movement stuff and a little bit of the slightly more hardcore stuff here in Portland, Oregon. And although I'm not in a position to name names, we could talk a little bit about places, but I'm not in a position to identify individuals and name names. But I did learn a lot with spending a little bit of time with the people about the security culture and communication security that they have been able to very successfully employ. And what was interesting was that we were on the same sheet of music with several things. One, tablet computers, because tablet computers can be used to convey large amounts of information in a short period of time, such as pictures, large amounts of text, and that sort of a thing. Ones not to recommend are going to be those that have a built-in camera that you cannot externally control or cover. Ones which are capable of going onto a cell phone system on their own without a removable chip of some sort. That rules out all of the iPad full-size computers. Most of them are capable of going and having an activated cellular type of an arrangement, even though you never activated the cellular service on it. The Microsoft Surface, it turns out, is not a winning play. It's tied a little bit too closely into Microsoft. There's some mixed reviews as far as using it for personal use. One of the other things we ran into is there's no ruggedized case available for them that is as good as what's available for other types of computers out there. So the Microsoft Surface is a no-go for this type of communication. One of the things those people tend to favor a lot is disposable cell phones, and there's a protocol for involving yourself with disposable cell phones. Which one in this picture is the no-go? Again, the Apple device, which is too smart of a smartphone. This is a Apple phone that I went through a lot of trouble to purchase anonymously and never activate, which I set up to use Wi-Fi only with Skype. One of the telltale ways to start to figure out that maybe somebody did activate it remotely and is doing something is that all of a sudden it starts losing battery juice on its own for no reason. That kind of has me highly suspicious of this one. And here you can see where it says iPhone not activated, right? And it's got the date and everything on there. So iPhone not activated. But it turns out that's not good enough security, so that's off the table. Small, cheap, disposable phones, Craigslist, eBay, and prepaid phone trading and stuff like that is what can get you a batch of phones that looks like this. And what they'll do is everybody kind of has a box or a pile or a donation box. You have one with a few minutes left on it. You need them to be activated. So if you show up to an event, a location, an operation, you need to show up with a few activated cell phones. And one of the better ways to deal with that situation is to have a sticker on the back of the phone with a phone number. Now this one doesn't have the area code. If you're traveling through several different areas or an area that has different area codes, then what you probably want to do is put the area code on there also. You just simply have an area code on the back of the phone. You will blank out the memory of any text messages. There's usually a protocol for erasing the text messages and erasing the previous calls. Now, can that be recovered somehow? In theory, yes. In practice, not so readily. And if somebody does recover it, it's not like they can get a hold of the pile of phone and recover it from them all very quickly. So what happens is somebody has a phone swap. You have a phone swap. You throw all the phones in a pile. You have the phone numbers on the backs of them. People reach into the pile and they pull the phone out. Now, let's say I were to pull the phone out and I pull that out of the pile. That becomes my phone. Everybody reaches in. They pull the phone out. there's probably going to be 1 or 2 left over. They simply go in a box. Then what happens is you break out a sheet of paper and you create a communication roster. So we break out a communication roster and we look at the back of the phone with the phone number. You may call it from the boss phone, which is actually kind of a good idea. And you don't call it a leader or that. We call it the coordinator phone. You will call that from the coordinator phone. You will confirm that phone works. And that will put that number into the memory. Okay, that puts that number into the memory. We call it from the coordinator phone. We confirm that it works. We put that into the memory. Usually everybody's kind of standing around in a circle, and then you write down the code name for the individual and what the phone number is for that, and that we confirm that that person can at least call the coordinator's number. Now what will happen after that at the post-meeting roundup is that people will exchange phone numbers with those they feel are relevant to their whatever their sub-operation is. So what you'll end up with is a roster of who has which phone, and not necessarily the real name, but a code name, and what the phone number is of that phone that they obtained. That becomes your communication for that particular working group, and then any subgroups get formed where you meet face-to-face and you exchange those numbers. At a later date, you may have another meeting. Let's say, for example, if anybody was compromised, you would have another meeting and repeat the process. Everybody passes in a phone, you do that. Now, one of the things that's going to happen is people burn up minutes on the phones, or you may be getting a phone that has very few minutes left on it. At that point, you can, excuse me, kind of slow down the meeting and say, hey, listen, I just got a phone that only has 10 minutes left on it. What do I do about it? Or, for example, this one I think was a track phone. This one's from T-Mobile. They're from different companies. The communication coordinator is going to have to be the one who keeps track of, okay, this phone or that phone needs some minutes added to it. And they may have a collection of SIM cards. They may have a collection of prepaid minute cards, which you can get from the various companies. It's going to be a responsibility to have some of those handy that were bought with cash, let's say at a Walgreens or at a drugstore or a Walmart or something like that. And you swap those phones around and you record those numbers with a code name. Now, this sheet, once it's all filled out, you may photocopy that, and then with a different colored pen, you hand number those photocopies. Okay? So what would happen here, for example, let's say we wrote all that down. This is kind of a brownish color on the pen. We would have, everything was originally written, let's say, in black or blue ink. We photocopy that, and then we number those photocopies with a different color pen so that we know whether or not something is a copy of a copy, or whether one of the communication rosters have been compromised. If it becomes compromised, you swap phones again. At that point, you may also have people who just plain keep a phone. So there's going to be people circulating in and out where some phone numbers are going to totally drop off the roster. Other phones are going to be added. That's normal. Okay, that's what works in major cities. Now, in country areas, you've got a different situation. And one of the things they ran into at the Bundy Ranch is that when the big party happened and there was over 1,000 people there, the cell towers were overloaded. Now, some people were claiming it was communication sabotage on the part of the government. I don't think so. I think what was happening is they only had limited cellular coverage in that area because of it's a rural area. Not a lot of population density. So this whole method that would work with, let's say, the anarchist political organizers isn't going to work so well out in the middle of nowhere. It can work in some areas, but it depends on how many people you're dealing with. You start getting into the thousands, it's not going to work. Okay, you start getting into the tens and 20s, it can still work. That's the other thing you have to realize is that there is voice recognition software and the possibility that all calls get recorded. So when you use cell phones as your communication medium, as secure as you can do this, as well as you can anonymize it, as well as you can institute a security culture on your own situation, what's going to happen is that you are buying time for the security of the operation, but they may be able to decipher that later on. Hence, two-way radios. Now, there's a lot of different options on two-way radios, and I will go over that in another segment.